We have covered all the variable definition and naming conventions in method. Now let's take a deeper dive into how variables are defined inside and outside of method and how this can impact each other. So we have a sample program here. Sample question variable contexts. We have a main method which does some printout and calls a function called the triple. This triple method will times 3 to whatever input is provided and return this 3 times input parameter. So when you call triple 5, it should return 15. When you call triple 10, it should return 30. So let's run there is an example of I just running. Main method started, triple started. Inside this triple started, we define a variable with a 3, value of 3, and times the input parameter with the local variable, and eventually return this value. And it successfully print out 15 when we provide a 5 as an input parameter. Then it returns 30 when we provide an input parameter of 10. So the logic itself is simple, but as we can see, there are 3 types of variables when you call a method. The first type is the callers variable. The second type is here, the method parameter variable. And third is a method local. In order to explain how they interact together, let's draw a memory stack again. Now let's say this is the memory stack again. Methods and the different methods exist in different memory space. Remember, all variables are stored in memory, and the different methods are stored in different memory space. So here, this part belongs to main. And here, another portion belongs to triple. And for each method, the space are broken into 2 parts. One part is a parameter. So for main, let me see how I can draw this better. I will use, let's say this part is the parameter, which is the args. And for triple, we only have 1 parameter, right? So this is the num1. And the rest are local variables. We defined a, I think, multiplier and the trip. So it should be black. This part is multiplier, and this part is try. And here we have a num, which is the variable in the main. So when you run a method, when you call triple from main, let's say you have the number 10 here, right? What Java does is it makes a copy of this value and put it inside. This is a copy of the value 10 and put it inside here. In the called, in the memory space of called method, of the method that is called. And map this value into this parameter's value. So whatever you change inside triple will not affect anything inside the main. So the first point, methods, or let's say each method has its own memory space. And two, whatever change caller make a copy of variables to the method's parameter variable space, memory space. So here you can clearly see that whatever you change, no matter how much you change for this num, it's not going to change anything back here because it's a separate copy. The multiplier, as you run, you give it a number. And this number, of course, will not affect anything back there either. And remember, all these variables have their scope. So multiplier type num1 only exists in triple. It does not exist in main. So the conclusion of this is that the name, the variable name, does not matter. You can have the same name in same variable name in different methods, but they are not related at all. They just belong to that method, that particular method. Variable names belong to the, make it bigger. Ooh. Variable names belong to the method memory space. Different method have different space names in different methods are not affecting each other. So you can have a multiplier here, and you can also have a multiplier or trip here in main method. Let's say I call it multiplier, but this multiplier belongs to main, and this multiplier belongs to triple. If you change multiplier in main, it's not going to affect multiplier here in triple, and vice versa. Whatever you change here in triple will not affect whatever in main. And for the same reason, you can use any name in main to call this triple. You can use a triple num1, number2, number 10. Doesn't matter. The variable name is just a name. When you call this method, you are copying the value to the parameter list of this method. So the name at that time means nothing. You don't need to worry about it anymore. Here, if I call this int num1, oops, not number q, number 1. These two num1, this num1 and this num1 are different. They will not affect each other. Whatever I change here inside is not going to reflect in here. So this is about primitive data types. Now, let's talk about something a little bit tricky, which is string. Let me clear this up. And redraw a memory space. So let's say I have main method here. This is main, and somewhere else there's this string space where I have a hello. And this address, let's call it address 1. Right, and this is main. Now, if I have a method, let's say I call it let me draw this first. And the name will be str sample. Here I'm drawing this as a method called str sample method, and with the parameter of string str sample, right? So when I call this string method from main, let's say I'm using a string original. This string original at the very beginning have this address 1 inside. This is the value. So string original, this variable stores the address of a string, right? When you call this value, when you call this method, you are passing this address 1 into this parameter space. Anything you do later on are operated on this address. But there is a catch. String is immutable. So when you have address 1, nothing will change inside this address 1 space. If you do any string manipulation, when you think you are manipulating the string sample variable, you are actually creating a new one, let's say world. For example, if I have a statement says str sample equals to world, when we execute this part, we're actually creating a new string called world and give it a new address 2. So this assignment will remove this address 1 from string sample and put an address 2 there. The address 1, the definition inside address 1 is not changed. So for, because string is passed by reference. So the method will receive the string real address. However, because string is immutable, so the original address, I should say, the string in original address will not change. When we change the string variable. Remember, in the method, remember we cannot change a string. When you do string sample equals word, you are not changing the string. Instead, you are just changing the string variable. A new copy of string is created and assigned to the variable. So while the original variable in caller still points to the original string address, and its value will not change. Okay, so for primitive data types, for integer, double, char, they are passed by value and they will not change. For string, we are passing by reference, but because string is, but the variable in caller will not change, and because string is immutable, so the value pointed to by the caller variable will not change either. You may ask, what if I can have some mutable object that I can change? The answer is yes. If it's a mutable object, you can change the content of object in the method. We will cover this later when we discuss about objects. But for now, for module 1, remember, primitive data types and the strings, when you call them, when you use them as parameters to call a method, they will not change. The value in caller will not change.